the Constitution is malleable, and it is a function of who the Supreme Court is at any given time. And much of this is about how folks on the left, nominal left, whatever you want to say, the non-Republicans, at least in today's day and age, forgot that for the better part of our history, the Supreme Court was a completely reactionary body and was inhibiting everything most of us would consider to be just and fair. And it was inhibiting a 40-hour work week, a 60-hour work week. It was inhibiting the ability to limit child labor. It was, I mean, we can just go on and on and on. And, but the point is also, it was allowing for poll taxes and literacy tests. It was allowing for the subjugation of women. And the court is returning to its mean. And so with that said, we thought it was a pretty good day to play this interview. What we're seeing now in terms of Roe v. Wade, and it's unclear what the, how sustainable the reaction and the anger, or whether it will grow as more women are subjected to abortion bans, and it becomes clearer, the obvious thing becomes clear, which is if the Republicans take control of government, the presidency, the Senate, and the House, they, unlike the Democrats, will have no compunction in getting rid of the filibuster. They march in lockstep. That is both a metaphor and probably a double entendre. And they will get rid of the filibuster, and they will pass a federal ban on abortion. And I am willing to bet any individual out there any sum of money that that will be the case. I don't know if it'll happen in 2025 or 2026. But if they control all three branches of government, that is what will happen. Make no doubt about it. They know this is incredibly unpopular right now. They know that if people understood that even these exceptions for rape and incest and the life of the mother are there, they know that that is like an indicator of just how extreme normies perceive these bans. But they know that if people were to understand the implications of these bans and how irrelevant those exceptions are in terms of the practice of getting abortions, they would have a lot of electoral problems. They would have rathered this decision to have come down in next year on like when there was no election. And so you're going to hear conservative after conservative pretend that this is sort of meaningless. It's not really going to change anything. Here is Mark Levin pretending that Roe v. Wade was not overturned, pretending that 11 states have not implemented their abortion bans already. I guess it's 10. The 3 are coming, and then the other 13 will wind up for it. Here he is, because he knows this is it's wildly unpopular with the American people.
Decision is very simple. Here we have what's called the Constitution of the United States, not the tax code. It's not Obamacare. It's very simple. It's about 5,000 words, and you can look all you want. The word abortion is not in there, and it's never going to be in there unless they add to it. Here's the deal. Really, Roe versus Wade wasn't overturned. Roe versus Wade was fundamentally altered by a decision in 1992. Roe was 1973, called the Casey decision in Pennsylvania, which changed the trimester test and had the undue burden and viability test, which they basically stole from Europe and from other kinds of laws we have in this country. The Supreme Court has been shooting from the hip on abortion now for about half a century, and that's why I have all these cases keep working their way.
I mean, he's just, he's yammering away, but I want to try and translate what he's suggesting. Roe v. Wade passes in 1973. It's allowing for restrictions upon this right were a function of what trimester the pregnancy was in. That was changed in Casey, as he says, in 1993 to a viability standard, which is you cannot restrict abortion until 24 weeks out. And then states have a right to restrict abortion in certain respects. So the fundamental principle of Roe v. Wade was that it is a right that cannot be encumbered by the states except for in these circumstances. Casey simply changed the way they measured the circumstances. Then he says they're shooting at the hip. Well, I mean, Casey was Casey. Anything after 24 weeks, states had certain rights to encumber this right. They did not have the right to say you can get an abortion, but you can only provide an abortion if you have ceilings that are 65 feet high in your office, because they were clearly designed to inhibit someone's right for an abortion. This is all very straightforward stuff, actually. The court has for decades, well, hundreds of years, established certain guidelines in which a fundamental right can be abridged. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That is a test. There is a test that they apply to the First Amendment. Where does the First Amendment not apply? It's a right, but there are certain instances where that right can be abridged if it is in the state's best interest.
Half a century, and that's why I have all these cases keep working their way to the Supreme Court from federal district courts, and so all these pro-abortion groups constantly litigating to prevent the states from having any regulation whatsoever. And let's be clear about
this is not true. Groups have challenged laws that have been passed by states that are passed specifically to keep testing the limits in which they can abridge the right that the Supreme Court found. And it was not until the court became more conservative that these cases started to gain any grounds. Remember, the original Roe v. Wade, 7-2, and the majority of those justices were appointed by Republicans.
States from having any regulation whatsoever. And let's be clear about what this decision says. This decision says something really unique in American history. We have a very, very powerful body, the Supreme Court, saying we don't have any power. When's the last time you heard Congress or the president or the bureaucracy say, we don't have any power, so we're going to give this authority where it belongs, back to the people in the states? It's that simple. They're interpreting the Constitution. It's not taking anybody's rights away. It's not giving rights to anybody. First of all, God does that. But that said, there's 50 states for a reason. We're not a parliamentary system like in Canada, like in France. We have 50 states for a reason, 50 legislatures for a reason. So decisions can be made by the people in these states. The majority leader in the Senate is from New York. The speaker's from San Francisco. They don't get to decide everything in between the country.
Pause it. First off, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer had nothing to do with Roe v. Wade. Second off, in fact, if they were to pass a statutory right for people to get an abortion, they could do that. So this is just garbage, because they know this is wildly unpopular and they're pretending it does nothing. The Supreme Court found this right in 1972 or 73, I should say. Just like they found an individual right to carry a gun in 2008. Just like they have determined that there is, I don't know, no right to a tort if you to be a member of a class if it's arbitration. I mean, they do this all the time. They do this all the time. And the idea that they're just saying, like, we're powerless in this situation.
Well, isn't democracy great?
I mean, and then, you know, what the only logical conclusion, too, is that they can find that they're powerless when it comes to saying that people have a right to contraception. They're powerless in terms of saying that people have a right to marry people from another race besides their own. They're powerless when it comes to protecting two consenting adults being able to engage in any type of sexual activity they want. They are powerless as to whether, I mean, marriage is not mentioned in the Constitution anyways. Maybe you can outlaw marriage, period, in certain states, according to Levin. And we could go on and on and on with this. But they're playing games because they know it's wildly unpopular. And the bottom line is, we were talking about this in the office today. Who is it? Siddharaman? Was that?
Ganesh Siddharaman is the professor
And
from Vanderbilt Law School.
From Vanderbilt Law School, and he wrote about the middle class constitution, right?
Yeah, the crisis of the middle class constitution, why economic inequality threatens our republic.
And in many respects, there's parallels with today's interview. But one of the things he suggested was we need to have TVs or cameras in the Supreme Court when they deliberate.
Absolutely, televised hearings. I think, like, not to get into the Heard hearing, but like the amount of attention that got, that should be on Supreme Court hearings too, and TV televising it would absolutely
Absolutely
facilitate.
I mean, I don't think it would be as popular as Johnny Depp,
I think we'd be surprised at how popular.
But I think it would be very popular, without a doubt, without a doubt. That's just one reform I think that would help at the very least get half the country that doesn't seem to pay attention to the implications of this court to pay more attention to it. Because the right certainly has been, and part of it is because they haven't controlled the court. But they methodically went forward with a project to put right-wing lunatics on there who have been pining for these changes for 40 years, and they did it. They won. They won. We will get into what the feds can do, what the White House can do about this ban later in the program.